Hi, my name is Holly Lavoie, and I'm the Program Coordinator for South Carolina INBRE. I'd like to tell you about our largest grant program, the Research Project Program, and this is for faculty. Some of you may know this as our former DRPs, or Developmental Research Projects. As we are starting a new funding cycle, NIH has asked that we call our larger projects research projects. The duration of this award is from September 1st, 2025 to August 31st, 2026. And there are some modifications of this depending on if there's a second year of funding. Because the Research Project Program builds off of our DRP program, there can only be a combined funding of 3 years total between the DRP and the RP projects. Last year, we only offered 1 year of DRP funding because of this cycle change. So we have faculty members that may have had 1 or 2 years of DRP funding, and they would be eligible for RP funding up to 3 years. Let me go through the 3 different categories we have of individuals that may be applying for research project funding. The first category is someone that's never had any DRP funding and never any research project funding, and they would be eligible to apply for an initial 2 years of funding. They would be eligible to compete for a 3rd year of funding. Second situation is an individual who last year had 1 year of DRP funding, and now they are eligible to compete for a 2-year research project. Those individuals that have had 2 years of DRP funding previously, you are still eligible to compete for 1 year of research project funding. Anyone receiving 2 years of research project funding will have it automatically renewed for the 2nd year with an adequate progress report that's usually in about April or May of the 1st calendar year. So some important dates for you are the letter of intent deadline, which will be due March the 3rd, 2025 by 5 p.m. through the scINBRE.org website. In a few minutes, I'll show you the location of that letter of intent submission portal. For your letter of intent, we need a descriptive title of your proposal, and we also need up to 4-sentence description of the project. We're really interested in finding out the biomedical nature of your project, and also this helps us arrange for reviewers for the review process. The deadline for application submission in its complete form is April the 4th, 2025 by 5 p.m. And this application packet must include all the required elements in the NIH face page signed by your institutional official. This year, we will fund 6 research projects at our primarily undergraduate institutes associated with scINBRE. We will fund 1 research project at Clemson, 1 at MUSC, and 1 at USC, Columbia. There are some eligibility requirements. As I said, your institution needs to be affiliated with scINBRE and have memorandums of understanding that give release time for research with our projects. Our research projects require your institution promise you a 50% release time for research. Investigators at all levels are eligible to apply, and you will find this information on the website, so I won't go through it in detail. However, tenure-track assistant and associate professors can apply. Non-tenure-track faculty who will become tenure-track by the end of their grant time can apply. Tenured and tenure-track faculty who are at later stages of their career can apply if they have a new project or pursuing a new line of research in order to reinvigorate their research program. Applicants cannot have major NIH funding, or in some cases NSF funding. This means faculty that apply for these awards cannot have NIH R01, R21, R15, R16 funding, or NSF Career Award funding, or be the recipient of a current IDEA program project, such as falls under the COBRA program, because they're part of the IDEA program as well. If you have a RO3 grant from NIH, you are still eligible to apply. And there are other circumstances where you may have current funding and are still eligible to apply. So what type of research is funded and how much money are we talking about? Well, NIH funds research related to human health. The topic of your research proposal must be biomedical science. And South Carolina INBRE has several focus areas shown here, but this research project is rather flexible in the research topic as long as it is biomedical science. It must also incorporate opportunities for students and or postdocs to receive training. And there will be a training plan for students and postdocs as part of the application. So this can be undergraduate students or graduate students, depending on the student population at your institution. What are some of the goals of this project for South Carolina INBRE? We would like to see students and postdocs trained in order to prepare individuals to become part of the future biomedical workforce. We'd also like the outcomes to be new faculty grant submissions and peer-reviewed publications. The maximum amount of funding per year is $55,000. And so you want to make an annual budget of $55,000. If you receive a second year of funding, you will also receive the amount that you budgeted for that year as well. South Carolina INBRE is funded year to year, which means your project will be funded year to year as well. And that means there's no cost extension at the end of the year. So all funds must be spent within the grant year. Let's go visit the South Carolina INBRE website. The best place to learn more about our research project program and our pilot project program are the scINBRE.org website. Under the funding tab, you will see links to pages for both our research project, or RP, and our pilot projects. In addition, there's some information about mentoring programs that will be starting this year. If you click on the RP tab, you'll come to the research project website. This will give you detailed information about the application process and forms needed. This is also the site where you will submit your letter of intent and your proposal. It's also the site where there's links to additional forms that need to be filled out as part of your application. This is eligibility tab with the details of eligibility, so you want to look at that before you start an application. And then you will see the proposal preparation instructions. This is a list of every component that you will need to have in your application, including some additional forms such as the BioSketch form, which you need to fill out for yourself and any other key personnel that are associated with your project. This website says $50,000, but it's actually $55,000. This drop-down menu also shows the page limits for each section of the proposal. Please pay attention to the page limits. You have up to 6 pages for the research strategy, but if you feel that you can communicate your project in fewer pages, like 4 or 5 pages, that is absolutely fine. There's also information here about human subjects and vertebrate animals, which I'll tell you about shortly. At the bottom of the website, there is a tab for human subjects information, and this will have a link to a worksheet that I'll mention in a minute to determine if you have human materials or data, whether that is human subjects research or not. If it is human subjects research, there are additional forms here that need to be completed and submitted as part of your application. Let's talk a little bit about human subjects research and animal studies. So human subjects research is allowed in the research projects. However, you should have an IRB approval letter at the time of submission and include this with your application. No clinical trials are permitted. If you are not sure if your project that involves human materials or data falls under human subjects research, you can go to that tab I showed you on the research project page and click on the link that will take you to this worksheet. I'm just showing you a little piece of the worksheet, but there's a flow chart where you can determine whether the materials you're working with fall under human subjects research. And if it doesn't fall under human subjects research, then that makes things a lot easier because you're able to omit some of the additional forms for human subjects. If your project involves vertebrate animals, you will need approval of your protocol by your institutional IACUC committee. If you don't already have an approved protocol, we suggest submitting your protocol as soon as possible. If your proposal is recommended for funding, a letter of approval from your institution for your proposed vertebrate animal work will be due by July 18th, 2025, so it can be submitted to NIH. So you may wonder what happens to your application after we receive it. First, there's an initial screening by South Carolina Administrative Corps to see that all the required elements are there. If they are, then it's sent out for review. Your proposal is typically reviewed by 3 reviewers following NIH guidelines, and they will provide comments and scores for your proposal. After these are complete, my office will collate them, send them to South Carolina INBRE's External Advisory Committee for review and recommendations. So they will look at the reviewers' comments and scores, and they'll do their own review of your proposal, and those with the highest scores will end up getting recommended for funding. If your proposal is recommended by the EAC for funding, then you will be notified by South Carolina INBRE Program Director Edie Goldsmith. Also, send notices to those who were not recommended for funding, and at a later time they will get their reviews. We will fund up to the number of proposals that we have funds for, and the final approval of your proposal is going to come from NIH. Funding for the year will be released once we have their approval, and SC INBRE receives their funding for the year. If you have questions about formatting, forms, general information about the program, please contact John Clarkson. He's our South Carolina INBRE Business Manager at this email address shown here. If you have additional questions, such as, does my topic area fit biomedical sciences? Please feel free to contact me. My email address is shown here. Good luck with your proposal.